Call the meeting to order, please. I'm Gene Bomber, one of the trustees, and until we swear in our new president, I will take over and do the first couple of items on the agenda. And the second item is to pledge allegiance. Please, you all rise and join me. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Now, we'd like to review the agenda. Anybody have anything they want to add? Or I think Bill does.
I have one thing. In addition to executive session to discuss personnel and real estate, we need to add legal to that as well, to discuss legal in executive session.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, moving on. We're going to go to item 4, and we're going to swear in some elected officials. David Winchester for village president, 1-year term. Susan Kelleher, trustee for a 3-year term. Diane Day and Betty Cheney have already been sworn in, so they could obviously conduct their duties in the past week or so. At any rate, it's time to swear in our new village president.
Make it official.
Make it official.
Yep, so raise your right hand.
I, David Winchester, do solemnly swear that I will be true and faithful to the state of Vermont, and that I will not, directly or indirectly, do any act or thing injurious to the Constitution or government thereof, so help me God, under pains and penalties of perjury.
And you also.
And I also, David Winchester, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of village president for 1 year for the state of Vermont, and will therein do equal right and justice to all persons to the best of my judgment and ability, according to law, so help me God, under the pains and penalties of perjury.
Congratulations.
Go right into Susie, swearing in for trustee for a 3-year term.
I, Susie Kelleher, do solemnly swear that I will be true and faithful to the state of Vermont, and that I will not directly or indirectly do any act or thing injurious to the Constitution or government thereof, so help me God, under the pains and penalties of perjury. And I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of village trustee 3 years for the state of Vermont, and will therein do equal right and justice to all persons to the best of my ability, my judgment and ability, according to law, so help me God, under the pains and penalties of perjury.
Congratulations.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I now turn the meeting over to our newly elected president. And congratulations.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. I'll do my best. First of order of business is we need to appoint treasurer for Village of Swanton, Vermont.
I'll move that we appoint Diane Day as village treasurer for Swanton for 24-25, if she accepts.
I accept. I'm gonna try and mute this.
Second the motion?
Go ahead.
I second the motion.
Alright, so.
All those in favor?
I sort of think.
Okay.
We have to make we have a motion first,
You motion, I
yeah.
second it.
so we have to approve the
All
motion.
in
and
favor,
then-
right?
Right.
Oh, yeah, so do that and we'll do it.
Okay,
Yes.
first motion to elect Diane Day as the treasurer, Village of Swanton.
Aye.
Aye.
You're in.
Alright, good. So I, Diane Day, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will be true and faithful to the state of Vermont, and that I will not directly or indirectly do any act or thing injurious to the Constitution or government thereof. So help me God, under pains and penalties of perjury. I also do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of village treasurer for 1 year for the state of Vermont, and will therein do equal right and justice to all persons to the best of my judgment and ability, according to law, so help me God, under the pains and penalties of perjury. Thanks. formalities
Congrats.
out of the way.
All right, the next official thing to do is do the motion to adopt the Roberts Rule of Orders for the procedure for village trustees for the upcoming year through March 2025.
I'll make the motion that we adopt the Robert Rules of Orders for the procedures and whatever for the trustees through March 2025.
I second.
Wonderful, everybody.
No discussion.
Oh, any discussion?
No.
No. The mayor.
Alan?
Yeah, can you explain that rule to me?
Robert's Rule?
Yeah.
Ah. Well, it's the ethics which we govern and run the organized meetings for
Open meeting law for the state.
open meeting law for the state of Vermont.
Okay.
For a second, type of motion.
There's one in the office somewhere.
A side note, we ordered copies for all of you that should have been here today. I think they'll be here tomorrow or Wednesday. You will all have them very soon.
I do have a printout in my records here.
So Robert Rules of Order, Mr. Paterno, is just a way in which the business is conducted where you make a motion, you second the motion, you have a discussion, and then you decide if you are in favor or not in favor. And most things are 2/3 majority, correct?
Well, yeah.
2/3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
2/3 of us need to agree on whatever is being presented.
Okay. So copies are on their way, right?
Yes, but you can also access it on the internet. You can just
Okay.
simply Google Robert's Rules of Order. There's cheat sheets and stuff.
Okay.
I'll write out.
All right, thank you.
It's also available in bookstores if you ever go buy one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had discussion.
Gonna vote on
Okay. So, all in favor?
it.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carries.
Motion carried. Thank you very much for the guidance. Option number 7 is the official voting results. You wanna read those, or you want me to read them?
It's up to you, Mr. President. You tell me.
Well, I can read them.
Okay.
if you want. So, we'll go through the elected officials first, starting with the village president. It was 275 to 285. David Winchester, Neil Spear. Village clerk for 1 year, Diane Day, 542 to 1. That's pretty official. Collector of delinquent taxes for 1 year was Betty Cheney, 531 to 4. Betty's not here, but she's already sworn in.
She is, yeah.
Okay. Village trustees for 3 years. Position was up between Shane Mott and Susie Kelleher, and votes casted were 203 for Shane and 313 for Susie. And congratulations, Susie.
Thank you.
Next up are the articles. So article number 2, general funds. 173,825. Yes votes 387, no votes 188. Article number 3, highway fund $691,290. Yes votes 406, no votes 170. Next article number 4, fire department budget, $88,480. Yes votes 425, no votes 146. Article number 5, the police department, $998,967. Yes 306, no 266. Article number 6, public safety facility, $14,833,613. Yes votes 130, no votes 440. A total of 579 votes were cast. And that ends all the voting results for 2024. Any questions? Okay. Number 8, approve and accept the minutes from Monday, February 12th, 2024, and minutes from the information meeting held Monday, February 26th, 2024.
I'll move that we approve the minutes from February 12th, 2024, and from the informational meeting held Monday, February 26th, 2024, as presented.
I'll second the motion.
I have a point of discussion. On the minutes from February 26th, it states that I asked, I mean myself as citizen, asked if the surplus funds from last year's budgets were moved, but that wasn't what I said. I said that I knew that the funds had been moved, and that I was asking what was done with the funds after they were placed in capital.
Also, what was done with the funds?
Yes, like I'm pretty sure I said $83,000 was moved to the capital fund. What happened to it? That's what I think I pretty much said. So I will accept these minutes with those changes made.
You wanna change them now? Diane, or-
So we'll go ahead and make the motion with changes, and then after the meeting, I'll run out and change them before
Okay.
they sign them.
That's fine. Just a comment, again, I think I say this in the past, maybe I think Adam does more so. That's a lot of work.
It is. That was a lot of work.
And thank you a lot.
Yeah, and one other thing about the minutes, and you'll learn this as you go, they're not a transcript of the meeting. It's a brief summary, so I won't be
noticed that.
word for word, but when there's an actual discrepancy in what you've said, or.
Yep.
Yep, just so you know. I can't find that sentence. Hard to exit.
Ready to vote?
Yes.
I'll accept the meeting minutes. Say all. All in favor of accepting the meeting minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Number 9, approve and accept the village warrants through Thursday, March 7th, 2024.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the warrants.
And I'll second.
I have several questions, but I'm not sure if that's something that's best done offline versus taking the time now to go through them. It's just questions regarding like what's what.
So that is totally within your purview. You can ask prior to meetings, you can ask during meetings, you can ask after, but I would say fire away.
Okay,
That way it's,
here we go.
yep.
Just keep in mind, I'm obviously new, just learning, don't know what all this stuff is. Some of this I can figure out, some of this I don't know. So Beauregard equipment is for, oh, sorry, it's,
It'll be, they'll find it quicker.
No, I see it. It's,
I'm just gonna go like straight through.
yeah, so these are the warrants as reconciled. We probably would have to have the actual bills in front of us to get granular for any
Okay,
specificity.
that's fine, that makes sense.
I would suggest that
I come and do it offline.
for the sake of time.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah,
Save
well, I
the
didn't know
time.
that, I didn't know it was
No.
gonna be,
Yeah, I got lots of questions, so I'm sorry.
you're gonna come visit us then.
Yes,
All
I'll
right.
have a date.
That's a good thing.
I'm learning, so I have lots of questions.
Fair enough.
Okay, that's fine.
All right,
Then they're done.
then I will accept the warrants as written.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just, you gotta officially say motion carried.
Motion carried. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
I'll get the hang of it.
That's, yes, you will.
Now you will.
So number 10,
So you can turn it over to me if you like.
I'll turn it over to Bill.
Jason Booth, Jeff Lewis, welcome. Come on up. So, for those trustees that are new, the two of you, they represent Aldrich and Elliott. And in this context, there are many different projects within the village, but in this context, they're here to talk specifically about wastewater, and then that will tie in eventually to Jason and Dylan coming up and giving an overview of the project. So we're here in particular for the very next item, which is a step 3 discussion, but take it away.
Great, thank you. So Jason Booth with Aldrich and Elliott, Jeff Lewis. So tonight we are here to talk through the Step 3 Engineering Services Agreement. This is for the Step 3 refers to construction phase services for the wastewater treatment facility upgrade. So if you're not familiar with the process, and I know 2 of you are new, I think we talked about this a little bit before at prior meetings, but there's 3 phases of the project that we go through with the state funding process. We have a Step 1 phase, which is preliminary engineering, a Step 2 phase, which is final design, and then a Step 3 phase, which is construction engineering services. So we're at that 3rd phase right now for the project going into construction here relatively soon. So with each phase, there's an engineering services agreement that goes along with the services within that phase. All of this is encompassed within the total project cost that was bonded November. So we are adding these on by amendment, but they're not new costs, they're part of the original total project cost, just so everybody's clear on that. So was this in the packet, Bill, or?
We have the original for signature, and it was in the packet. Yes.
Okay, so this is actually amendment number 2. This document is part of what's called an E.G. CDC document, which is a document that is approved by the state of Vermont that they utilize for this particular program for engineering services. And this is an amendment to the original engineering services agreement. So that first agreement, the original agreement, which was executed January 25th, 2023, governs all of this. This is an amendment to that. So basically what we're doing with this amendment is we're pulling services not added as in that agreement. They're written out and detailed in that agreement, but we're now pulling them into the contract by adding this phase. So we've detailed, in addition to what's in the original agreement, what these services include. So this includes bid phase services, added, this adds in section A104 of the original agreement, which is bidding and negotiating phase. This includes a disadvantaged enterprise procurement process, which is part of the state of Vermont's requirement for utilizing their funding. This includes the full bid phase services, which is 30 days, and that's bid advertisement, that's bid distribution, that's RFI response via addendum to contractors to make modifications based on contractor questions if necessary. That includes attendance at one pre-bid meeting, which would be here, with a site visit at the wastewater treatment facility to go through the plant and talk through the drawings and talk about all the upgrades that are incorporated in the contract. Attendance at one bid opening, and then after the bid opening, what we do is we put together what's called a bid tabulation, where we summarize all the bids, we send that out, and then we do a bid analysis, and we would be back here to present our recommendation to award. That bid analysis includes checking banking, bonding from the apparent low bidder, checking references. We go through an update on the total project cost, and we also have to do a DBE analysis to make sure that the contractor has followed through with the required DBE process as part of the procurement through the state program. The next phase is the actual construction phase services. This includes 2 parts, and it is for the duration of construction, which for this project is expected to be approximately 455 calendar days. Construction administration includes pre-construction meeting, it includes monthly meetings with the contractor, weekly site visits on site to check in on contract progress, meet with the contractor that's on site, we meet with the operators, talk about issues that are happening that we can work through and resolve at that point. It includes any processing of change orders, review, preparation of requisitions, Review of submittals, shop drawings, those are submitted on behalf of by the contractor. We review them for compliance with the contract documents. Excuse me. It includes substantial completion and final completion and warranty efforts. And warranty efforts are the part of the contract that extends after the contract is completed by the contractor. So there's a 1-year contractor warranty. And so what we would do as part of those services, we do quarterly meetings. So we would meet with the operators and whomever else wants to join on site. We talk about how things are operating since the upgrade, what tweaks might be able to be made process-wise to make sure the system is operating at its optimum level. This also includes resident project representative services. And what this is on-site observation during active construction. So to utilize the state of Vermont funding, the SRF program, they require that there's a representative from the engineer on site for the duration of the project. I say duration of the project, it's actually active during active construction. And there are some times where maybe we don't need to be there full time. Maybe there's some part-time where contractors mobilizing or they're putting up silt fence and those types of things. And we work with the village and with the operators on when we need to be there. When there's very active construction, equipment installation, subsurface work, building work, those types of things, our representative will be there. And then the final portion of this that's added in is what we call special services. It's really the work on the post end. For the most part, there are 2 items that are incorporated here that take place during construction, and they're in here because they're sort of a separate add-on that the state has required more recently with their procurement process, and that's the Davis-Bacon certified payroll review. So the contractor on a weekly basis and all subcontractors have to submit payrolls, and there's a wage classification through Department of Labor that we have to follow and check that they're meeting all the fringe and wage benefits. And so we check those on a weekly basis for the contractor and any subcontractors that are on site. The other item particular to this project is the American Iron and Steel provisions. These were implemented maybe 10 years ago, where all steel on the project has to be American made. So we have to track that to make sure that the contractor has to provide certifications for all the steel materials, and we track those and we log those and make sure that we're getting those on your behalf. This includes record drawings. Our representative on site will be tracking how things are installed, subsurface, where things are. At the end of the project, we put those into a set of record drawings. We get them to the village operators, get a copy to the state, and those will be hard copy and electronic copy. And as part of this one, we also have putting together an O&M, a small O&M update. There are some new things obviously going in with the filters, so we'll have an O&M component that's part of that as well. And that probably will start before the end of construction, but that's sort of a post-construction phase effort. All that together, the amendment is for $635,800. I will note that the resident project representative, that's the person on site, that is a not to exceed. So if we're not there, we're not using that time. So it's not billed. So, sometimes we'll see projects, if you get a contractor in there and they go faster, maybe we don't use all that time. So there is some flexibility there potentially, depending on, a lot of it has to do with contractor performance, contractor duration. That was a lot. Anybody have any questions?
2 questions.
Yes, sir.
You had mentioned 455 days.
Correct.
Is that from the start of the construction to the completion?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's
So
not 90 days or 180 days. It's literally almost a year and a half.
It'll be about a year and a half. Yeah. So what we take into account when we're looking at that duration, we take into account the equipment lead times, which is probably the biggest factor in that contract duration. So once you have a contractor on board, we would issue a notice to proceed, and that would sort of be day one. That's when the clock would start ticking for the contractor. They at that point issue POs, they get their orders into vendors. And that at that point, we're probably 4 to 8 weeks before we start seeing shop drawings for that equipment. Once shop drawings are approved, which are typically 2 to 3 weeks from once we see them, that's when the equipment goes into production. And then you can have lead times up to 26 weeks. So we see things out that far. So this sort of encompasses that overall effort. We also take into consideration the time of year when construction will be happening. What can they get done here? And then is there a shutdown? Do they continue forward with winter work? So on and so forth. So there's a lot of factors built into that 455 calendar days.
Right. And so at this point, no contractor has been hired.
That's all part of
Nothing.
the bid phase.
That's all part of the bid phase.
That would be the bid
Not
is
yet.
what we
Right.
assign
So
them.
this goes out to public bid. We post it on the Vermont registry, the bid system.
Yep.
If there's a local paper you want to put it in, we do that as well. But that's the requirement of the state, and that sort of reaches the contractors. But that's the point at which we get into getting a contractor on board.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing that I just want to highlight that Jason keeps saying, requirement of the state required. One of the funding sources that you guys are using on this project is the SRF program. It's the State Revolving Fund program. That brings with it a bunch of requirements, but it also gives you guys some benefits, such as a favorable loan rate. There's some grant funding that's available through that program. One of the other things specific to this agreement that is there, the state has reviewed this already to make sure that everything's in line with typical engineering practice. So we know you guys aren't experts in what engineers typically charge or what our scope of services typically look like. That has been reviewed by the state already. Everything kind of passed their check before it came to you guys. Just wanted to point that out as far as you guys being involved in that program and some of the parts of things that kind of go along with that.
Last question.
Yeah.
With the labor shortage throughout the state in New England, do you foresee a delay in this 455 days? Do you see it extending beyond that?
I would say that less of a labor issue and more of an equipment supply issue
Okay.
is what we're seeing.
And I'm assuming that'll be part of the bid process that,
It will be.
we have a window and
It will be.
we don't want to drag this on 3 years.
Yep, it will be. And so that's the biggest delay we're seeing right now is equipment and materials. And, it really varies. When you have a project with equipment, like this project, you have a project like this where you have variable frequency drives which are used on large pieces of equipment. Those can be significant delays on some projects, and it depends on the size of the component and where they can source it from. We've seen some VFDs on a project we're just wrapping up that have been out over a year to order. So there's some significant potential for delays with respect to equipment. I see that more so than a labor issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, I have just physically, hopefully 2025, it sounds like, actual construction, or
So
2024?
we're looking to get this, and that's another kind of part of the conversation here. We're looking to get this out to bid here within the next 2 months.
Okay.
So best case early April, worst case May, and part of that depends on the state's turnaround. They have our 90% set of final contract documents, so they have to provide a review at this point, the 90% review. So in either one of those scenarios, we would be looking to award to a contractor very quickly and get a contract signed so that they can get materials on order, start the site work, and hopefully the building this year and get concrete. The steel building can go relatively quickly, and I'm talking about some of these things, and you guys may not know what is involved, but I understand Bill might be bringing you up to speed on a lot of this stuff. But our expectation is that starts this year. And gets to a point where we can continue with some of the sub work, which would be mechanical, electrical work over the winter, and then hopefully with equipment arriving in the spring in order to keep progressing with the project from there. So that's sort of In a perfect world, that's how we see it all play out. That doesn't always happen. Bidding climate's been a real roller coaster over the past 3-4 years. This year in particular, we're seeing relatively favorable bids on these types of multidisciplinary projects. We're not seeing as favorable bids on linear related projects where it's pipeline only. And it's a different type of contractor. You've got a multidisciplinary GC versus a contractor that just does dirt work. So we're hopeful that we're, being what we've seen this year, that we'll have some decent competition on this job, and we have some people that know it's coming and they're ready. So they're ready to bid.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
yep. Bill.
Where do we stand on the centrifuge? So you'll see a picture of that, and it's our sludge dewatering, and we prioritize that as part of the project because it's critically important, and it's gonna be one of the very first steps.
Great question. I was coming with my update on the centrifuge.
Okay,
So, the really quick catch up that I think Jason's probably gonna do a better job of is the centrifuge has failed. It's an important piece of equipment. In order to address that as quickly as possible, as Jason mentioned, equipment lead times is one of the most crucial aspects right now. So even prior to putting this project out to bid, we did a solicitation and asked 3 different centrifuge manufacturers if they would like to supply the centrifuge for this project. We got 3 bids back. We received 3 bids. The centrifuge manufacturer that actually made the one that you guys currently have was the apparent low bidder. And we have moved forward with initiating a purchase order with them. It came in right under what we originally anticipated. So far your project's on budget, even though you guys haven't started yet. So congratulations, that's good news. If anything, you're $2,000 under.
So centrifuge is obviously priority.
So the centrifuge is a very high priority.
100%.
So we've issued a purchase order. I think you guys have issued the 10% payment for that.
Yes.
The last we checked in with them was on Friday afternoon. They were getting their ducks in a row, and we anticipate seeing a submittal from them shortly. They, in their proposal, indicated that they'd be able to have that for us around the June-July timeframe as far as the centrifuge, the unit itself arriving on site. So how we anticipate this going is on either of the 2 timelines that Jason presented, we're going to award this contract to a contractor. They're going to arrive on site, and their centrifuge is going to arrive on site, and they can just install that, and you guys will have an operational centrifuge again. So we've tried to move that to the very front end of the contract, and we're on pace right now. It's basically
So installation phase of that is quite straightforward.
very straight.
It's essentially the same unit 30 years later.
When you see the picture, and we do have a picture in your PowerPoint, correct? It literally will fit right on the same.
It should
rack.
sit right on the exact frame. It's the same thing.
So I did speak with GEA this afternoon. I spoke with the vendor this afternoon, and they, like Jeff said, met Friday. They are initiating the shop drawing phase right now, and they're expecting that they'll have them to us within 2 weeks. So we're on track, and that's moving forward on their end as well.
And the operational stamina of this new centrifuge is gonna be good for
Another,
hopefully.
so typically wastewater equipment, we get about 20 years out of. That's about what we get out of. Centrifuges can run a little bit less. You guys got 30 out of your previous centrifuge. So anywhere in the 20 to 30 year range is kind of what you'd anticipate for this. And we'll see kind of, there's big caveats that I'm not messaging, such as there's new requirements from the state that are changing how we're handling sludge all over the place right now. We don't anticipate any changes related to this centrifuge equipment.
But this is mostly just component versus actual facility completely.
It's a part of your sludge handling process, so all of your biosolids go through, basically everything that goes into that big fertilizer area. I don't know if you've been to the site or not. Totally fair. All of the solids that come out of the plant go through this one piece of equipment, so it's a pretty important piece of equipment. In turn, you're not processing your biosolids right now, you're just returning them to the lagoons, which will be a future problem for the village to deal with, because there's no other alternatives, so. The other end of design update, I know you guys I was gonna try to let you guys, do you have, we can probably get through this and I'll give you the end of design update, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to throw too much at you guys at once.
Yeah, so you're gonna have any questions?
Any questions from anybody out there?
We do have people online as well.
Online? Folks? So hopefully by the end of summer or midsummer,
So-
centrifuge will be back in action.
The state revolving loan paperwork requires a motion. The suggested motion would be a motion to approve the State of Vermont State Revolving Loan Program, Step 3, Clean Water Loan Application, including the engineering services agreement with Aldrich and Elliott for upgrades to our wastewater treatment facility. That would be the suggested motion.
I'll make that suggested motion.
You gonna,
Second it.
there we go. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful.
So the quick update on the final design, which I'm not officially on the agenda for, and I know I'm not actually being recognized for, but just before Jason goes, we're at 90% of design right now, as Jason mentioned. The steps that need to happen between now and when we can put the project out to bid, we need to get through permitting. There are a few permits on this project that are all currently under review. The Act 250 permit is a big one on that, and that one is in with the Act 250 review office. The wetlands permit is another permit that needs to be approved and it kind of sits under the Act 250. I've been in touch with the wetlands advisor and they are reviewing the permit. They've asked us to make a quick change to the permit that we submitted about a month ago, so we are making that change and it will hopefully now be moving through the wetlands process. There's a local permit which has been submitted, and we've talked to your local zoning administrator, and that I believe is currently under work. So that's on the permitting end. Those are the major permits that need to happen there. And then there's also the state needs to review that 90% set and issue their approval of everything as well. So all of that is currently ongoing. That's currently out of our control. That's the one that's kind of on its own timeline that we're hoping to encourage and cheer along. In our control, we have internal QA QC going on our 90% set, and we are finalizing all those details. A 90% set will be arriving to your village probably about the end of this week or so. We're gonna get your guys getting on that. It again is not 100% set. There are some things that we're still changing that'll give you guys a good idea of exactly where we're at. The subs and us are kind of coordinating to move the 90% set to where it's at. We're doing a final budget analysis, a final cost estimate update, and we're just kind of helping get the documents where they currently are all the way up to where they can be good for bidding. Heidi is your grant specialist and she's been excellent. She's working on a grant right now through the, I think it's ACCD. You guys were awarded $800,000 as part of this project. So we've been helping her to kind of get that grant continue to move forward, and just keeping you guys moving down the path. This funding application should initiate a final review from the state funding office, which will give us a final look at what their numbers will look like. We'll get like an actual funding package from them, which we've been projecting to date, which we're hoping to finalize and see exactly what the final numbers will look like for this project. So that's kind of where you're currently at in the process, kind of finishing off the final design. And then we mentioned the centrifuge there as well, and where that's currently at. Happy to answer any questions you guys have about that before we move into your overall wastewater update. Oh, Jason, I'm so sorry. That would be, if you guys have any other end of design questions.
I think the only question I have is do we need to appoint the village manager to sign any necessary documents? Or just the 3 trustees
Coming
on
back.
this loan fund?
I think that's part of the paperwork.
So the loan application gets signed
It's
by
everybody,
the
all of
village,
us.
Yep,
by all the trustees,
I think
and
that's the
Bill,
next time.
and the clerk.
okay,
So
yeah, cause I know in the past, we've appointed the village manager to sign any documents.
Doesn't it
right,
authorize rep?
so Bill technically is the designated authorized
Okay.
rep already.
So we've taken care of that then.
Yes. Unless you wanna change that. But that's
That's a
internal for
fantastic
you.
job.
as a-
He's here every day.
That's it, that's key. So Jason's up next.
Unless there's any other questions for these gentlemen.
Any other questions?
I have nothing else to insert into your agenda on ceremony.
Gentlemen, are you willing to stay though? Because there might be some. So,
I certainly can,
uh,
absolutely.
Diane, if you could fire up the PowerPoint as a share. Gentlemen, come on up. Jason Starr,
Thank
Dylan
you.
DuPont,
Yes.
come on up.
Thank you both.
So as a prelude, and then they'll introduce themselves to you and to the crowd and TV. As a reminder for wastewater, we have 2 full-time employees. You're looking at them. In addition, we now have just recently added a second to water, and the 4 of them will be within 12 months, fully certified to operate either facility. And then those 4 of them share the on-call responsibilities, because it's much more than on-call. On a weekend, those chores don't wait. So you'll see when you take the tour, one of the 4 have to go in Saturday, Sunday, does not matter, to do those chores. So we at least have 4 people for safety, for equity, for all of those things where we strive to have that work-life balance. So we thought that was critically important. That's why we added the second position to water, and the philosophy that they share those responsibilities.
So the system needs somebody there every day.
Yep. Oh, God, yes.
Yes.
Yep, and you'll see, part of the tour will be the day where you must clean one of the baskets that they're gonna refer to.
All right.
It's a lovely, it's a lovely job. I invite anybody to see that. So, Jason, if you could first introduce yourself to everybody, please.
Yeah, I'm Jason Starr. I'm the chief operator at the wastewater plant.
Dylan?
Dylan DuPont, assistant chief wastewater operator.
We're all yours, so you got a PowerPoint we're sharing.
So some of the past year improvements that we've done. So we have not only our plant, we have 2 pump stations in the village. So this is from our Foundry Street pump station. So we added some emergency lights and exit signs because there wasn't any from the past. We've done a lot of work over at Foundry over the last year. There's some old piping, that's actually down by one of our grip channels, and that pipe was from an old process that they no longer do, so it was just left there. So we had a line crew come over and we took that piping out of there. Also, if you can see in that middle picture, there's some intrinsically safe lights. Those were original from 72, I believe, when they put that in. There was only like 3 lights, 2 worked. So during like the time change, when we go do our rounds on weekends, might be 5 in the morning, there was more like 2 little light bulbs that worked. So we ended up putting money aside and having all new lights. We have 4 LED lights now down there, so you can actually see what you're doing. So that was on the back channel outside. So in the downstairs, we have our valve pits and our valve gallery and our pump gallery. The motors we're getting up there in age. They were pushing almost 30 years. So we budgeted and replaced those motors. There's 3 that work, and then there's a backup spare. So we ordered 4 brand new motors, pumps, and we had, me and Dylan installed them. Also, the valves were starting to show their age. They were starting to get tired. So we have a couple that we're gonna have to contract out because they don't close. So we purchased all the valves we needed, and again, me and Dylan changed 4 valves out that we could actually close off. So we're trying to just get that place back up to par, so that way we don't have any failures that could have been avoided ahead of time.
And I think that's an important distinction. They won't do what they have to absolutely contract out, but the fact that they're not just running the plant, they did the majority of that mechanical work and the replacement for those parts, and that's a massive money saver.
Lynn says you can't see the presentation.
Stand by for technical difficulty. If you exit the presentation and go back to the slideshow. And slideshow, yep.
So how deep is that?
So you're gonna go here.
Boundaries, the back channel, in the back of the building, it's open, it's probably 15 feet down, but on the inside, it's probably about 35 feet.
So they're pumping stations to keep the water out of it all the time?
Yeah, so that's all concrete. The building's concrete, everything, even the ceiling's concrete. It's like a little bunker. So in the back, where we go down into the grit, down to the grit channel where the waste comes in, there's actually 2 tanks underneath that.
Okay.
And that's where where it collects, and then there's 3 pumps inside on the other side of the wall inside. So
The line goes above the bed of the river, or?
goes under. There's 3 lines that go under the river from Marble Mill. There's a structure on the Marble Mill side, and there's 3 lines. There's like the main, an overflow, and then a higher overflow. So if the flows go up more, and the first pipe can't take it, it overflows into the second pipe, and then if that one can't handle the flow, the third pipe is there to send it under the river and then over to Foundry Street.
Diameter of the pipe, sorry.
2 8 inches and 1, or maybe I'm wrong, I'm sorry, it's been a long time since I've seen them.
I know, I think you're right.
I think it's
Yeah.
2 8 inches and an emergency 6, but I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
and those are encased in concrete under the river.
I might have missed it during the technology transfer here, but, did you talk about the fact that we have 2 pump stations,
Oh.
13 miles of line?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah,
I guess
so-
I just did, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, so we have the Foundry Street pump station. So the right picture, is our Bell's, pump station. That's on the other end over on, Upper Ferris Street.
Yeah.
Um,
Field.
Yep,
Yeah.
so that one, we've actually done a lot of work there also. When I first started at the wastewater plant, we had just 2 regular pumps down there. And with flushable wipes and all the other flushable stuff, our pumps would get clogged. So, towards the end of COVID, we were over there probably once a week pulling the pumps out, we call them rags, but they're like flushable wipes wrapped in the pump. So we budgeted, we bought a chopper pump, so there's a blade underneath, it chops that up. And then we budgeted the following year, dropped a second pump in, that was last year, we bought the second pump, that blue one right there. So we have 2 chopper pumps over there right now. There's a stainless basket, which Bill was talking about earlier.
Don't fall for it. He's gonna take you to the
So-
basket.
so-
Don't fall for it.
The wastewater that comes into there goes into the stainless basket. It's like 3 foot by 2 foot, 3 foot tall, 2 foot wide, and it's perforated. So the water, the liquid comes in, goes out, the non-liquid stays in there.
It's a good way to put it.
It's a
But,
pre-filter, so to speak,
Yeah.
just like septic systems.
but stuff still goes through that basket and we get to our old pumps. So we installed those pumps to negate that. I'll wait and stepping ahead. We budgeted this year, so I wanna put a grinder in there. So at Foundry right now, there's a grinder, so when rags come through, it's kind of like it's a shredder. They go through, it shreds them up, yep. So what I wanna do here is get rid of the basket, put a grinder in, so the stuff will come through the pipe. It'll ground up into smaller pieces, and then when it falls down and the pumps turn on, it'll shear it even more, so it'll be smaller. Cause all that material will eventually end up in our lagoons.
Yeah,
And
it does.
so,
Do we do any
There it
public,
goes.
like, do you know, they're technically flushable, but they don't really,
We've done a great deal of that, and while they say they're flushable, and for your local at-home septic system, if you're gonna get it
yeah,
backed out all the time, you're probably fine. For our system, they're horrific.
yeah.
Well, it's the same thing for
Yeah.
home septic
Yeah.
systems that are.
Right, right.
So,
But people are addicted to these things.
yeah,
Now, are we just talking about wipes, or are we talking about feminine hygiene products too?
all of it, all of
Probably
it
all
gets
those type of
flushed,
items.
yeah. Dental floss is another one.
Okay.
Lots of dental floss. I don't know why
Right.
people flush it rather than just throw it in the garbage.
It all gets bound up and
Yeah.
Yeah.
turns into these big, long,
It looks-
rags.
It almost looks like a mop head, like a rag mop.
Okay.
Imagine.
Yeah.
I think we've seen photographs.
So, back to the picture, so on the left-hand side, we've had, four or five five of these solar aerators that were purchased in the past. Right now, there's only 2 that work.
Solar aerators?
Yeah. So we pulled one out. The motor was bad. We ended up purchasing a new motor for it. It was like pre-COVID. And then we found out the motor needed to be programmed. Long story short, we couldn't get anybody to come. We installed it, but we couldn't get anybody to come program it. So it sat out on the shore for about 2 years. So we decided to make it electric. So we found a cheap motor that was laying around, brand new motor, and we converted it over to electric. So we're gonna try that, put it in, test it, see how it does over the summer. If it keeps running,
And those go into what?
into our lagoons.
Into
So-
lagoons.
So we have to aerate our lagoons.
So it's kind of like a solar bead.
Yeah, that's what they were, or
That's what they
solar
were,
bees.
solar beads.
Yeah. So we're gonna just put this back in and try it and see, and hopefully it works. If so, it's like a $200 motor. The electric motor was like 5,500, so.
So how do you umbilic or cord that?
So used the same plug because those were set up for 120. So at night when there's no sun, the 120 would kick on and run the motor. It was geared. It was reduced. The frequency of the 120 was bumped up to like a I can't remember if it was 240 or 408 to turn the motor. So I left the 120 cord on there so I can plug it back into that 120 and turn the on switch and power it up and let it run.
Okay.
So,
These have been a challenge since the beginning.
But again, it's a couple more examples of
Right.
the
Yeah, I
the
remember reading
ingenuity
about it when
of
they
the
came
team
out.
down there.
yeah, I mean they worked good up until what ends up happening is the pinions and the gears, the little needle fall out. They bind up the gearing and then the motor just sits there and burns up. So, but that's what I've found with ours so far. So I'm hoping this works. We can, I mean, the bodies and everything else is good. We'll see how long they run, if it works. So,
Yeah.
and we're out like an old motor, worst comes to worst.
Right.
So, and we did some other stuff also. This was our latest project. So around so we have 2 15-acre lagoons, and there's like a woven wire fence that encircles it to keep out people and animals and whatnot. Over the years, the brush grew up into them, and there was trees. There was like a 18-inch oak tree growing through the fence. So me and Dylan started last year cleaning that off, cutting all the trees and brush off the fences to reclaim them before they ruin the fence, because the fence is 3/4 of a mile long, a little over 3/4 of a mile. So to replace that would be, you're looking at thousands and thousands of dollars. So, and also we've budgeted to have them sprayed. We have a company that comes in up from Massachusetts that does like our switch yards, so the trees don't grow up into our switch yards like out here to the power lines. So I have that guy come and he sprays the fence, which kills all the buckthorn and vines that grow in them, and like the saplings. So this year, me and Dylan went out and we finished cleaning off that. So we cut 3/4 of an acre of trees off that fence. So our next big job is to go through and chip all of that stuff and just blow it in the woods and be done with it. And then from there on, we can maintain that fence, make it a lot easier. So that was last year's into this year's project. So 2024 projects we have for this year. So the bottom left is our centrifuge. That's kind of what it looks like.
Perfect.
And like Jeff said, it'll fit right in where our old one is, or our old one sits right now. Like you said, our last one ran almost 30 years, so I think we got a good return on that. So hopefully this one goes another 30 or so.
Is it McQuam Shore or this, where is this facility?
North
Which is
Street, right
on
up.
the way toward
Yeah.
Palm Shore.
Okay.
The picture to the right, that's the grinder that I was talking about. That's what it'll kind of look down in our pump station. The bottom is where the grinder unit is, the top's intrinsically and safe motor, moisture protected and everything. So that's what that'll look like. Top left is, we have a tractor that we use at our plant for moving the biosolids. As they fall out of a chute, they pile up. So we purchased a tractor last year to move that. We use it for mowing around the lagoons, all sorts of stuff, snow removal. So this year we budgeted, we bought a boom iron mower because you can't mow the edge of the lagoons down in the water with just a regular mower. So we purchased that, so now we can keep the shoreline, or I guess you'd call it, clean. Because we'll end up having, like, if we don't mow it, we have the grass grow up, then we'll get
Grass grows really well down there.
yeah, then we get cattails, and then we lose storage in our lagoons as that encroaches out. So this way we can keep up on all of that. Also, the edge of the woods on the outer ring, the woods will start encroaching in. So we've been working on that also off and on, trying to cut the woods back, push them back, and help dry it out. So we purchased that to help clean up down there, keep everything nice and neat. The causeway is the road in between the lagoons. It's like an access road. So our aerators have electrical cabinets along that. Couple, I think it was 4 years ago, all the cabinets were starting to lean. We straightened them out. We brought more material in to raise the road because it was starting to sink down and it wasn't very high. And if we had a lot of water, some spots were getting submerged. So Public Works came in, worked with us, straightened that out, and we started raising it. We went as far as we could. I think we ran out of time and money, so we budgeted again, and Public Works came down. They did probably another 50, 75 feet of that. We got probably another 50, and we'll have that whole road above the water level by like 2-3 feet. So
We'll get you done this year.
yeah, so that's another work in progress. What else? Oh, and then our upgrade. So we'll be working on that this year.
Just that.
Yeah, just that.
$8 million.
Also, this year, we were gonna land apply. So that bottom left corner is our storage barn down at our plant. So all the material that goes to the centrifuge gets dewatered, mixed with lime. It comes out of a chute and goes in that building. So we typically store for 2 to 3 years. We'll bulk it, bulk pile it, and then we land apply. So we'll take, we'll have Public Works come down, haul the material up to our Woods Hill fields, and then the farmer will, like that bottom right corner, come up there with his equipment, spread it out over our field, and then till it in. So before all that, like first of the year, I had to contact the state, let them know we were gonna do it. They need to know before, I think it's March or April 1st, if we're gonna or not. So I reached out to them. I'll have to calculate how much material we have contact the state, let them know how many tons we wanna land apply. And then they'll give us a calculation of, 10 ton, or, 5 tons an acre, or whatever, depending on how much we have. And then, September, October, we'll have to go up there. We have, in our permit, we have offsets from like property lines, neighbors' wells, river, or all that. So we'll have to go out, measure the field, put grade stakes all around the field for the buffer zone, and like the middle is where we'll be able to spread it. So then, and then usually it's the beginning of October, we'll truck the material up there with Public Works, and then the farmer will have 3 days to spread it out on the land and then till it in.
It's an extremely prescriptive process.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure that all of you have the details, but it is literally, you do this, you get approval, you do this, you put it here. It's, there's a lot at stake. Many think that the ability to land apply dewatered sludge will go away. If it goes away, we have to find an alternative for that is not free. So we currently own a significant amount of acreage up on Woods Hill that we purchased decades ago. And we've land applied enough material to literally save an incalculable, well, you guys would be able to calculate it, but a massive amount of money instead of trying to find a landfill for this stuff.
That's great.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Is that stuff burnable? Is it dry enough to burn?
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so there are some facilities that can incinerate, not in the state of Vermont. You need an air pollution permit for that. And you need to do it at an extraordinarily high temperature. The closest one of those is, I think, Albany, New York, that has an incinerator. They also have one down in Connecticut, but we've brought up incineration as an option in Vermont and have been told that that's not going to fly anywhere. We are continuing to look into that in the future, but the answer to your question is yes, technically possible, but not in the state of Vermont currently.
Okay. Thank you.
It would be nice though.
They can do all sorts of cool stuff, heat recovery, it's pretty cool. But yeah, I can get into the technical, but I'll recognize.
I know,
it.
your passing just came out. You want
So Jason, earlier you said that the solids are currently gathering in the lagoons. What needs to happen to the lagoons to clean them at a later date?
So that's a
Good question.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. Lagoons are designed to accumulate solids over time. I'm not trying to step all over Jason's toes here, but they're designed to accumulate sludge. Those lagoons are 15 acres each, and they're 4 or 5 feet deep, somewhere in that range. Of that, they go out and they measure the sludge depth every year. They were just encouraged by the state to submit a plan on what your village thinks it's going to do with sludge. You guys have some good capacity in there still. Just huge, large surface area, a lot of sludge. The downside of having a huge, large surface area and having a lot of time is that when you go to clean it, it's going to be a massive undertaking. So you haven't cleaned them, I don't think,
ever.
So they've been in operation now for 40 plus years, somewhere around 1980, or I forget what the 60, I forget what year this actually was.
Okay.
It's been a very long time. You guys haven't had to do it yet. When you do, it's going to be a massive undertaking to do. But in the short term, not any huge concern. But whether you were to do this right now or not, you are eventually going to have to clean those lagoons out. It's
I take it
unnecessary.
one at a time.
Yes.
the right, and you'll see, we'll be able to explain it better when you go for the tour. The right side's the predominantly one that's gonna have to be done first. We have to, starting this year, start to have a dialogue about what annually we set aside for this purpose. We're talking, I'm gonna say $15 million in 10 years to do this. That's my guess.
Yeah.
So that's right now, assuming that there's a lot of things in play right now with sludge disposal of biosolids with respect to wastewater treatment facilities, and there's no answers from the state right now. And so the hope is that you have time for them to develop answers and have more cost-effective, maybe even statewide solutions to being able to dispose of your sludge. Right now, there's nothing. So if you did it today, astronomical costs. you have time, so
I mean, like,
hopefully
having to truck it out of the state.
you, exactly.
Coventry.
So
Yeah.
they won't even take it.
Yeah.
They won't
It's
take
been
it.
going up to Canada.
Yikes.
It was going up to Canada, they won't take it anymore either. So the last project we did, we just did some work this spring up in Hardwick.
Yeah.
And they had to truck it to Franklin, New York, so that was a 6-hour round trip trucking cost. They were at about $2,000 a dry ton, which is just an astronomical amount. So basically it gets dewatered in place on site, dumped into a truck, and then brought to a landfill somewhere. And these places are starting to not take it because of either space availability at the landfills or concerns over PFAS, which is where we are here at Vermont.
Right.
It's a big concern, that's something that we're spending a lot
Can
of time.
that be processed similar to like cow power through a digester and an energy?
You'll still end up with a
Still gonna end
sludge
up
in
with
there.
something,
Still-
but-
Yeah,
So the PFAS concern, in order to get it up to a high enough temperature, it's approximately 1200 degrees Celsius. It is the initial phase. It's like this huge, it's a very, very, very high temperature, and they're not 100% sure that that actually does it or not yet. So the temperature solution is being proposed, and it's going through some things. I think there's a place in California that's trying to do this whole, put it through a centrifuge like you guys are, and then basically gasify it, and like then you don't have the PFAS, you've destroyed the PFAS, but then there's concerns about like, have you actually destroyed it, or is it going into the air? They're still trying to figure out exactly what to do with PFAS, and despite it not really being banned out of food wrapping yet, they're focusing on biosolids. So we're focusing on this.
I guess the bottom line though is you have time before you actually have to do it,
Right.
but you don't have time to wait in planning, at least cost-wise,
Right.
on how you want to be prepared for it.
But it's a way.
Right.
We prepared a memo for you in September of 2023 that discusses this issue in depth. I'd be happy to forward a copy of it if you'd like, or I don't know if Bill has a copy. Either way, just if you're
course
curious about it. I was trying to, yeah, you got it. I'd be happy to forward that copy again if that'd be helpful.
But you can send it to me and then I'll forward
do
it
that.
again. But I do have it. That's the one that talks about the 10-year kind of.
The 10-year plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And it's not something as simple as like, we just keep raising the rim.
no,
No.
You'll see why. You'll see why when you see
So,
it.
yeah.
Okay. It just becomes the underlayer, so to speak.
The state will watch you. Maybe,
Huh, that's fascinating, guys, thank you. Anything else? Anybody have other questions?
I have another question. Is it cheaper to build another lagoon than to clean the lagoon?
No.
No?
I can't imagine so your specific lagoons are called facultative lagoons. They require a massive amount of land area. We are having a real hard time getting to expand this plant by about 5 feet on the fence line. To build another 15-acre lagoon, I don't think is a feasible solution in the short term. It's not a bad thought, but yeah, no, I don't think that'd be a feasible solution at this
But
time.
if you had the land, it probably could be.
If we had the land and permission, and it was right next to where it currently is, and we had a plan for what to do with the current lagoon, we'd still have to clean all the sludge out of the current lagoon.
So I think we had no backup,
So might as well use it.
septic system, right?
That's what we're saying.
The whole community, this is it.
Fascinating.
How many water customers do we have? Waste, water, or
1,500 wastewater, 1,550 water,
Yeah, that sounds about right.
ish, give or take 1 or 2.
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, guys, yeah, look forward to cleaning the baskets.
You just watch, you don't have, oh, okay.
I can do it micro out there.
Okay, yes.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well done.
Later.
Safe travel.
A lot of money there.
So another one of those things.
Cleaning up the roads scares you.
It does.
No, you're good, thank you, appreciate it. Well done, you can come in tomorrow at 7:01. They don't report till 7:30, so they didn't like that.
18 years old. I haven't done those changes.
When
I'm gonna go ahead and mention this, since it's a one-year update.
Oh, yes.
Then you cut me.
I thought we were going
Too
to
young.
make me the electric
I remember seeing it,
commissioner,
it was, yeah.
but we seem to have skipped that.
I thought I saw. You just got two.
Ta-da!
Ta-da.
I did see that before, but I don't
I
think it
saw it
ended up on
before.
this one.
It's on the other agenda.
Yeah, it was on
The old one.
How about we
The one
do
that was
it, we
emailed.
do it next time?
we can do it next
Okay.
time.
Why don't we
Yeah.
just do it under any other business?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we can do it.
Yeah.
That's
we
where I
can do
got
So
it.
under, just make
Yeah.
a note.
Okay.
It's already
That's right.
done.
So what happened to my agenda?
I don't know. But
He
you don't
printed
wanna
the wrong one.
introduce this next
He didn't
one,
print
I'll
your
start following.
update.
13?
Yep,
Village manager update, Bill.
all right, let's roll. Let's talk hydro briefly. So we right now are in spring runoff and it's spilling. We're producing 6.8 megawatts, which is good. It means we're meeting 100% of our electric needs, plus putting a little bit back onto the grid. The bad news is that we still are down Unit 1 and Unit 2. Both are the old ones, one 100 years old, one roughly 80 years old, 1 megawatt production for each. Unit 1 the part's been produced. It should be installed relatively soon. Installation date is pending. Unit 2 had a new thrust bearing replaced. During the startup procedures, they discovered that there's another bearing issue down lower, which means they're gonna have to take that entire unit apart. That thing's gonna, let's just say what it is, it's gone for this year in all
They're
likelihood.
gonna pull the wheel.
They gotta pull it off. So we're waiting on cost estimates to do that. So herein lies the problem of being 100% renewable, producing 80% of your energy needs for your 3,800 customers. An aging facility, it comes with just that, those type of upkeep cost. Again, Unit 1 will be back online relatively soon. We're gonna be out of spring runoff. It won't matter then. We go run a river. When you get the tour, I'll explain more about what that means, but it means we can't pond. We have to just literally take what the river gives us, where now we can reflect and make an adjustment to maximize the amount of megawatts that we produce.
How many turbines do we have?
5.
5.
So the babies are the 1 megawatt, Unit 1 and Unit 2. Then Unit 3 and 4 are the larger ones, 4 megawatt, 5 megawatts. And then Unit 5 is the baby that is right under the dam that produces a 0.5 megawatt. But that's depending on how high the tail race is. I can actually talk hydro now after 16 months, and you will be able to do that as well.
That's interesting.
Question.
Yes.
With Unit 2, was there any, did we notice anything going on when we were doing our I lost my word.
No, so we do inspections, right? Maintenance,
Thank you, pre-inspection.
our maintenance team does maintenance for all the facilities with a concentration on this. What we have to do now is have the experts come in, we gotta pull it apart. At the same time it's apart, we're gonna do what we naturally should be doing all along, which is a cost benefit analysis of determining if we should upgrade that turbine to a modern turbine.
Mhm.
You're talking about a significant amount of money. And part of that analysis is you can only produce what your pipe allows, and we're not gonna ever change that. And we're kind of in a flux. We get penalized by the state of Vermont because they consider our production under 10 megawatts. We get penalized by FERC because nameplate, if you add up, and this is how they calculate it, if you add up all 5 units, we produce more than 10 meg. So we're below the threshold there. We're in a catch-22 in terms of all of that, and the penstock is the straw where the water comes down to get to the turbines. It's only so big. So no matter how fast it's rushing, it is only going to produce up to a maximum based on the water that can flow through the penstock. So it would be helpful because if you upgrade these turbines to a modern turbine and say it's a 3 megawatt, you can now recalculate how you do power and you can survive another unit being down and still maximize your production. So over the long run, right, and it all comes with formulas, and you'll hear all this when we get an analysis in terms of if you do this, here's your increase in production, and in 5 years you break even. So it is another example of when you look at our electric department, while we have not raised rates since 2016, while we're in a very good position, we have cash, there we go, assets of just over $500,000. It does not take much to go through that when you're talking about turbines. I mean, we wouldn't be able to buy a new turbine for anywhere close to that, but I'm talking about for the repairs, even the thrust bearing was $40,000. So it just adds up. So that's the hydro update. Questions on that?
Well, I have many, but it'll eat up the entire.
Well, so that is part of it, right? And as you evolve in these roles, I think the natural evolution is gonna be, we just had all discussion on wastewater, right? So that's where we go first.
Yep.
And then we just start taking tours of different parts of the organization. And it will be like drinking from a fire hose. I know 1%, I've been here 6 months. I just sound like I know 2%. I said that for Sean.
And we've only got the one straw that feeds all 5 turbines, right?
Yeah, correct.
And we can,
Well,
in theory, have
4.
a few down in line, because as the one goes out, shoots out to the next one,
So you
Daisy
have
chain
1, 2,
together
3, and
somehow.
4 are in the main part of the facility. Those are all penstock restricted. The smaller one is at the base of the dam.
Not the dam itself.
That's a baby. It's 0.5 megawatt.
That's the oldest.
No, that's the newest.
That's the newest.
Yep, that's the newest.
It was unit 1, the one that was being 3D printed, something.
Yes,
Yes.
good job. Yep, for sure.
3D printed.
Okay, let's move over to police department. So we're gonna begin the process this week of advertising the approved and budgeted positions within the department. That includes the position for the police officer and the administrative assistant. So there's been some recent news. Of course, WCAX and others wanted to follow up on the fact that the bond was defeated 70% to 30%. They requested an interview with me and with Chief Matt Sullivan, so we did that. And that again opened up a discussion about what next steps are, because that's what they asked. So it wound up a little bit, some of our folks in the public, and I am absolutely guilty of being obsessed with being an effective village manager, because I was obsessive about this, and I am, about doing the right things for the taxpayers and the citizens that we serve. So we have talked about this openly at every single meeting. The next steps are an internal discussion, because it seems like the most viable, effective solution to our space needs, which didn't go away, right? The bond was defeated. We gotta respect and will respect the will of the voters. It was loud and clear, too expensive, bad timing, whatever number of things. But we had talked about what other possibilities might be. So we're continuing with all of the evaluation on 124 First Street, the mitigation of any brownfields. Of course, we're in Regional Planning Commission for petroleum funding and for brownfield funding, so that is free to us. We have a 3-acre stormwater rule that we must meet by the state of Vermont. We'll move forward with that. The discussion now internally will be that we will do an internal we'll do an internal brainstorming as to what the required square footage would be of the electric department needs for the next 50 years to include any of the personnel that live in the wing where the support staff live, to include the village manager, the assistant village manager, controller, everybody except the police department. That's no cost. It's free for us to have the internal discussion, so we'll do that to get those next step suggestions to you as the Board of Trustees, with the long-term thought of utilizing the space that would free up in this L to renovate and have what hopefully will be an effective solution for the police department for the next 50 years at a cost, for that portion anyway, less than the 14.8 million. And we would essentially not renovate anything else. We would, at the same time, we would be remiss if we didn't look at addressing those 4 critical deficiencies that were identified during the whole process for the fire department. And using the space that they're in now to try to rectify that, again, through some type of funding. So that's kind of the plan forward. I think it's important to continue that dialogue with the public. I don't know where some of this stuff comes from. We are not building a public safety building next door regardless of the vote. It's not happening. We will explore internally and have open discussions with the trustees about what the most viable next steps are.
Excuse me, Bella, is Mrs. Goy Rescues still moving?
They purchased the land next door. I don't know when. I don't think it would happen quickly, is my sense.
We haven't
So,
heard.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's any intent for them to move immediately, which I mean,
I didn't
within the
assume
next
there
few
was,
years.
but I'm just
Right.
like reflecting of the vote that happened in Highgate on their budget. I was wondering if that changed their plans to vacate
I
their
don't know.
section of the building.
I don't know.
What happened with Highgate? I actually missed that.
It was voted down, their
Okay.
budget.
Unusual.
Yeah, for the rescue squad, so I just not sure how that affected that space here in the complex.
Yeah, I
And their
don't,
plans.
don't know. Not sure.
Fair enough.
So that's the game plan. Again, the dialogue's gonna continue, but the long-term goal, and we've talked about this, is to identify a concept of regionalized policing where that will improve policing for the community and the surrounding communities while lessening the impact on the village taxpayer. That's ultimately the goal. This is a 3 to 5 year plan. This is a long game. This is not happening overnight because we can't scale up, and I don't know that surrounding communities are ready to do that buy-in. I think the next steps are getting in a room with other managers and administrators to see if they have an interest, and they're the ones reaching out for us, by the way, to do this. We have a dialogue, again, 100% free to have the conversation, to literally just map out on a whiteboard based on the number of entities that are interested, what that law enforcement response would look like, and then have a candid discussion with everybody's grand list, what that impact would be, with eventually all the governance structures getting in the same room and saying, do we all want to take this to our voters? And here's what it would look like, with some definitive numbers, or pretty close to definitive numbers, which would be far less than what we're paying in the village for police services right now.
Okay.
All right.
I think-
Depots,
I
oh,
think
sorry.
it would be, something I would add to that is we certainly would be open to suggestions from
Yes.
anybody.
Yeah, I think that's the next obvious step is to look at, do an assessment of what we have and how we can do it. Big concern would be how to pay for it
Yep.
versus property taxes, so that's a big,
Yeah, well, it'd
Puzzle.
be, right, if it's electric department, that would be fees.
Right.
And going to the PUC and asking for a rate increase. And that's a long process. And then that would be spread evenly amongst our 3,800 ratepayers between the village, the town, and Highgate.
right.
And then this is a different conversation. So really, it's 2 phases again.
Yep.
And one would be more of a direct tax increase through a bond request, while the other one would be a bond request, but impacted.
Funded through, yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
I think that the public would be a little more receptive to that type of scenario for that piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Especially since they can generate the revenue.
Right.
In theory,
Mhm.
depending on how many turbines are down.
True.
But that's also another discussion
Yep.
for the future as well.
Mhm.
Great, yes.
Yep. And well, we have a path. The bridge, the depot, we'll just call it the bridge from now on. Depot Street Vietnam Veterans Memorial Bridge. So McFarland Johnson is our vendor. The bids went out March 5th. The bid opening is on March 20th at 10 a.m.
March
So
20th.
March 20th at 10 a.m. Again, public bid opening. We hired McFarland Johnson for their expertise here. They will have a rubric. They will help us score it. But again, it'll be public knowledge. Here are X number of vendors, and here are what the bid amounts are. And again, as a reminder, we have the remainder of the $200,000, so roughly $175,000 in grant funding, with $200,000 set aside from this approved budget. So fingers crossed, we need 375 or under.
Okay.
That's what we need.
And we're still thinking about doing the shut it down more cost effective, save a lot of money on flagging and
We
delays.
incentivize the contract to do just that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of
Just
common
two of my
sense.
questions are-
A lot of common sense.
Yeah, like 7 to 10 days, close it down, get it done, reroute, state's on board, town's on board, BB Road reroute.
And it'd be good to
Yeah.
experiment for maybe 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, so related to those, the current next best guess for the widening project, which would go Route 78 from the village almost down to the West Swanton Elbert Bridge, 2028, which, let's face it, 2029. The
2032.
replacement date for the bridge was 2029, which is now likely 2030 or 2031. Reminder, it's another discussion to put on our radar. Depending on the scope of the replacement, because as the proud owners of the bridge, we have a minimum of a 5% match. If it's just a decking replacement, if it is an entire replacement of the bridge, it'll be 10%.
Do we know for the expansion joints that maybe at the same time when it's closed, it'll get a new topping of level pavement?
It will not at our cost, with the exception of everything that we scarify down. That's a requirement as part of the RFP where we replace that. So I'm saying 6 to 10 feet on each side of the expansion joint. Yes, the rest of it, I do not believe that the state of Vermont is gonna put any money into that until replacement time.
Pretty holy situation, that's for sure.
It is.
Perhaps we could do it ourselves
Yeah.
with our paving budget. It's possible.
Okay. Yeah, it's not very long, right? But they're gonna do part of it, so we just have to worry about. the
Yeah.
part in the middle.
We're gonna do part of it, so it's,
May as well
it
continue.
it can be a dialogue for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think we're done with the bridge. I just
Oh,
got
God,
a
no.
feeling.
Okay.
2032.
Well, that's just it. It's
I called it. I called it.
Yes, you did.
I called it.
You did.
Yeah.
So total eclipse, just a final conversation on this. I mean, I say final, there'll be probably a couple more. But the next informational meeting's on March 13th. Heidi will be covering that for the village because I'll be at the VEPSA Board of Directors meeting. So again, it's a reminder, partial eclipse from 2:14 until 4:37 with a total eclipse at 3:26 for 3 minutes and 30 seconds in our area. We're going to staff, I think y'all know this, the fire department members do not get paid unless they're toned out and they're actively on a call. We will essentially tone 5 members to have them on standby here so that they can respond. We will have additional police officers here. Everybody believes that this is a really cool event, right? It's a good event for the community. The big fear is traffic. Traffic and tie-ups and backups on exit 21. We're trying to get a head count on the number of people that are taking the opportunity to camp up at the field days. We're trying to kind of get a number, but look, this is not the Grateful Dead. This is people coming as a family to identify something that'll be really,
Can they
really
do the
nice
bridge
for the
then?
community. No.
And Bill, can
Just
you
asking.
verify, I'm pretty sure Chief has DIR training that day scheduled?
I believe we've instructed them to cancel training.
Okay.
Yeah. Because of the impact, the office here is gonna close at noon that day. You're gonna see that in a lot of municipalities, probably all of them. And again, that's not true for fire department that's gonna staff, or the police department, or myself, but everybody else, it's gonna be true, so.
That's okay, I'll bring you some cookies though.
All right, so we hope for just a great event, but I just, the fear is just that, traffic, and I hear a lot of stuff.
They're really thinking Grateful Dead type of traffic jams.
In
I remember that.
parts of the state, I think St. Albans, I think that's a real concern. I think they're expecting 60,000. And, it's great for the community, but at some point, that traffic does back up.
Well, here, yeah.
And then you get people frustrated and not paying attention, and there's an eclipse, and you have accidents, and then you have injuries, and then your first responders are tied up. That's where I think you'll see the issue. And the hospitals are gonna be ready to go, because I think you're gonna see some things happen in the ER. It's not just the event, because it's the weekend leading up to the event as well. So anybody interested in
3
selling
days before and
selling
after.
rooms at their house, they should have no problem at all. Yeah. Maintenance and hydroelectric, just a very brief update. We are now fully staffed, adding 3 positions over the past 2 weeks with interviews. That was successful, so we are currently, as we sit right now, 40 full-time, 9 part-time, 30 volunteer firefighter professionals. We're in good shape. Soon to advertise the 2 police positions, one sworn, one civilian. The last thing I would like to put on your radar is a reminder that perhaps we should consider fairly soon working with the town on a local option tax and getting that discussed.
That was one of my questions.
It was on my
So
agenda as well.
if the trustees agree, I would like to start that dialogue with Brian Savage. We've had it in the past, it's been discussed in the past, but just to identify timelines and next steps. And I think it's pretty consistent. It'd be roughly $400,000 a year, 150,000-ish for the village. And again, so that's a nice set aside for very restricted uses that would be identified by the trustees in advance for what you can utilize it for. But it's largely transitory, and it seems like we're one of the last communities to get on board and consider it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense considering how much of what we hate
You need to make a motion.
actually drives through here and spends money without the LOT
Right.
versus local option, local property taxes, finding another way to generate something to improve the community versus that. It seems to work really well for St. Albans.
Yeah.
And they don't have the truck traffic and the travel through traffic that we do.
But they have Walmart.
They have Walmart.
Walmart and the businesses is awesome, and you know,
$100,000 vehicle sales.
yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. So, we don't need a motion, I just need some kind of approval for recommendation that I can work with Brian and at least
Make
get
it
that
so, number
dialogue going.
I'll second that.
All right.
Great idea.
And that's all I have for village manager update.
Public comment?
I do. I'm gonna be public for a minute.
Why not?
I'm gonna be public for a minute. So, as I welcome Dave and Susie to our board, I do want to thank Neil Spear for all his tireless efforts over the years working to make Swanton a great place to live. I want to thank him for sharing his vision of Swanton with me, and I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart for believing in me. I remember the day on my porch when I spoke to him about me running for trustee. I told him that I had my doubts about being able to do the job if I was elected. I didn't go to college, and I didn't have a degree. And this is what he said to me: if you have common sense and a love for your community, which you have, you'll do just fine. He was right. And for that, I owe him a debt of gratitude. We had a great team. We were family. Neil made sure, regardless of the circumstances, we remained family. Neil was the glue that bound the board together, even though he did not have a vote in any outcome. He was the one who held us together when the art wall fiasco happened. He kept us calm when we were called racist and got calls for our resignation. He kept us calm when some citizens were creating unrest and division within the community. He never backed down from a challenge and never hid behind a computer screen when things got tough. But most of all, he had our backs, and we had his. He taught me a lot about being a good citizen. As a leader, his guiding principles were humility, trust, and teamwork. The team worked extremely well under these principles. Swanton will be a better place if these principles are continued. Mr. President, thank you for everything. You will be sorely missed. And I put this in public record.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Neil, and thank you, Chris.
One other thing, looking at, I guess, kind of stepping back, but it's based off your report. If we're looking at possibly building a new facility next door, and again, I know this is in the early stages, you're definitely brainstorming, you're not putting together a plan by any means, but do you know roughly, Diane, or maybe Bill, what the gross revenue is in you don't know, but if you know what the gross revenue is for the electric department roughly?
Yeah, it's in the book.
Do you have a
Yeah,
general-
revenue from sales, you got a book right there, Adam?
In
Yeah.
general, maybe?
Probably not the last time. Okay. They were right there.
And
I
the
think
reason
it's
I asked that,
41.
reason I ask that is if we look at potentially building a new facility for the electric department, obviously a stick-built facility, unlike what had been kind of priced before, you know, at roughly $750 a square foot, could most likely be built somewhere in the $250 a square foot type range. So about a third the cost, most likely, to build that. In all reality, is that something that you think the electric department with rate increases is gonna be able to possibly even do on their own, or mostly on their own, by way of rate increases? And that's why I asked what the gross number is, because I mean, I would think if you're looking at somewhere around maybe let's just say a 2,000 square foot facility, just as a round number. If we're looking at somewhere, you know, around that being about $500,000, let's say $500,000 to $750,000 facility to build, next door, then, what type of a number would that take for?
So 2023, total sales of electricity was 6.7 million. Projected for 2024 is 6.8.
That's revenue.
So 6.8, that's revenue, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
It's
so
operating revenue.
they can build their own.
So that's about a 10%, you know, of that, we're looking at, that's annual, that's every year. So
Yeah.
we're looking at a bond of sorts to do that, you know, and,
Probably.
That's just revenue, then
Yeah.
you've gotta factor in all the expenses that go against that,
For
but
sure, yep.
still.
We have a $500,000 in the bank for electric. It's the electric department, their square footage needs, plus everybody from Heidi that lives in this wing, with the exception of police department. You're talking about a 10,000 square foot building,
at large.
roughly. I
Lynn
mean,
wants
that's,
to chime in here.
But what do they currently have now?
I say they're at about 8.
Yeah.
8 or more
It's
combined.
hard to say
Yeah.
because of all the stuff outside and everything.
Pretty darn close to that, Alan, including what we have, because remember, that's gonna be where you go to pay your water, sewer, electric. All customer service reps are gonna be there. That's where your training room for electric's gonna be. It's much more than just a bay for the trucks. That part's easy. That's the easy, least expensive part of the whole equation. It's the rest of it.
Yeah.
So you're looking at realistically more like a couple million, for that facility versus something a couple.
Oh, you're looking at more than that.
I mean, like in theory, what would be great is doing something similar that we did for the town, that Cross Engineering put together. We did that for under $1 million. Even 100% more, you know, it's a couple $1 million. But the big deal would be the administrative part that would be added to the facility. And the fact that we could pay for that through electric rates. And the big question is so we're 6.8 million revenue, but we're one of the lowest in the whole state. What's the difference between that same amount of kilowatt that we generate or megawatt that we generate in a year versus the higher electrical rates that are in the state from, like, say, Green Mountain
And
Power or something
remember,
like that?
we don't set the rates.
Yeah.
Public Utility Commission sets the rates.
Yeah.
And they do that based on a comprehensive review of all the things that are involved in essentially our debt ratio. And then they determine what those rates are gonna be.
Now, how many, what do we have that's under nonprofit? We got the electrical company, we got the water company,
Wastewater,
and wastewater.
correct.
Okay, so there's an income on water.
Mhm.
How much is that? Do you need this book?
Those are separate stovepiped parts of the organization.
So do you have any money in the bank saved underwater?
We do, which is why that we're, like we said at the annual meeting, we don't need to raise the rates for water or wastewater in 2024. But it's not like our private bank account. You can't just say, I'm gonna take some water money and I'm gonna use it for the electric department. You're not allowed to do that.
You don't have to take it all.
You can't take a
Can't
penny.
take
You
anything.
can't take a penny. Not allowed to.
State will not let you do it.
You can only use it to deal with the utility itself.
Right, but if you're moving water over there with the electrical,
No, it would just be electrical. And what do you want to say? Public Works would have a heck of a lot more space in the existing structure.
Yeah, by doing all of this stuff we're talking about eventually down the road, the only people that are not impacted is the fire department. But
Right.
we can make some improvements there, but Lynn has something online from a
Okay.
controller's point of view.
So in the electric rates right now, don't forget, there's that $440,000 principal payment that we were making on the hydro bond that we made the final payment in 2023.
Yeah.
So we already have in the rates that much of a bond payment if we're looking at rate structures if we build the building for the electric. Going down to the path that Alan was talking about, water and sewer both have roughly $1 million in the bank each, but that can only be paid to fund their projects. We can't, it's their operating money. We can't use that to fund anything for the electric department because we have to do fund accounting and each department has to stand on its own. And we have an audit every year. I have a CPA license. I will not compromise that for anything or anybody. So we have to play by the rules.
So Lynn, if I understand what you were just saying, we have a bond that we're paying off.
We already have, we
already
paid
have.
it off in December.
Oh,
Yep,
okay.
so that money though is still in our rates. It would get adjusted the next time we have a rate increase. They'll look at whatever debt we have. When I joined the village almost 20 years ago, we had $15 million outstanding at the hydro plant. We're currently down to about 2.7 million. And that is basically the rubber dam that we had to do and unit 5, which is the minimum flow turbine. So everything at the main plant has been paid off, the final bond back in 2023.
So in theory, without raising rates, we might be able to afford this.
Well, it would be it's 440,000. Without knowing, what this project would cost, what interest rates are high right now, you got to look at what the debt service would be and go from there and factor it all in.
Sure.
And like we talked about, you have all of these other things. You have evaluation at the hydro facility of the exciter panel, which is 40 years. It should be a warning sign when you go to replace a part and when your electrical engineer calls his former contact and that contact's been dead for 7 years. So these things are very expensive. The turbines are very expensive.
But what the problem is, we can't afford anymore right now. So we're trying to make this work for everybody. So we're trying to use the dollars that we do have.
Sure.
Yeah.
To try to make it work.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
I know everybody has that bill where something is gonna break. On a car, truck, home, everybody deals with it. You have a turbine, but you have an income that supports to fix that turbine.
Yes.
You know, you got money coming in.
Yep.
Okay.
And we sell X amount of megawatts or kilowatts or whatever you want to say out on the open market as well, so we have revenue kind of from that.
Yeah, we'll
But we
walk you
load
through.
shed.
Right.
We load share? Okay.
So our units, whatever they produce covers our load of our customers. And then if there's anything excess, then Vermont Public Power Supply on our behalf sells it. And then we get the money for that.
Yeah.
So some months we got, the other month we got over $50,000 from BEPSA. Another month we might get 125,000 based on hydro generation. Then if we get a month that it's dry and we don't generate, we might get a $250,000 bill from BEPSA because they're having to buy power on our behalf out on the
Win
market.
some, lose some.
It is a very complicated
Need water.
process.
Yeah.
Well, we had that in spades.
Like today, when the water's flowing like it is, we're making money.
We're doing
When we
fine.
go run a river, we're paying money.
I think if we all work together, we could probably come up with something.
It sounds like a good economic theory
It's a good
to
start.
apply to some of our issues.
And that's doing it with good faith.
Anything else?
That's for me.
Okay, those good questions, though. Thank you.
Sorry,
Nothing under public comment, I have a couple any other businesses.
So, number 15, any other necessary business?
Yes, sir.
I have
And
Just two things. One, Diane, did I reserve the park for the car show on July 27th already?
I think you did,
Okay,
but I'll make sure.
okay, thank you.
I got a
then-
question on that, if I can. Is there any way that we can have multiple car shows instead of just one?
We could, but I'm only up for one.
You're only up for one?
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot.
I know it's a lot of work. How
We
much
could, we could.
How much money does it generate?
For the chamber, it probably generates around $4,500. Not so much for the businesses around. I've heard a lot of complaints from the businesses over the years that they don't make anything. They'd rather just shut down, you know? I mean, the idea is to bring business in, you know, people in for the businesses. It doesn't seem to do that. Again, maybe St. Marie's or Bob's or Champlain Farms, whatever it is now.
But if you're trying to get your hair done.
But if you're trying to get your
about
hair done, yes, exactly. So,
that, Not me. You know what I said? Yeah.
They're, yeah.
yeah.
You do kind of look like a hippie.
Yeah, no, it's long right now, I'm not gonna
Something we
lie.
can look at.
What's that?
That's something we can probably look at.
Yeah. Yeah. If we can find a couple people, we'll talk offline.
Yeah.
Okay. And the only other thing I had was, I did want to make a motion to appoint Susie Kelleher as Commissioner of the Electric Department.
I'll second the motion.
Those are big shoes to fill.
Yeah, okay. Any questions or, okay, so, wonderful. Susie Keller.
All
Electric
those in
Commissioner.
favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Susan.
Motion carried.
Good job.
Motion carried. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I have just a couple things. One is where do we stand on the bandstand? I know a while ago,
Yeah.
that was like something that was brought up and you said, I'm gonna look into it, and then I don't know what happened.
So we are researching, there are some available grants possibly, right? Just like every other grant that you pursue for parks. I think that we should have a discussion probably sooner rather than later of what our starting point is. What I mean by that is the public so enamored with the structure as is from a historical standpoint that you can't remove it, right? So we gotta then we gotta remodel, because those are two absolutely different paths. So I really truly think that's gotta be a dialogue to start with of, does the public love the existing bandstand as it's designed right now? Because then you can do little things, right? You can take care of the paint and all that stuff and put new benches, but it's fairly restrictive. If the public says, nah, I'm not really tied into that current design, you could really get creative there.
Okay.
Then it comes down to identifying, scoping, funding, and as you will learn, and I think you're well aware already, when we start to have these discussions, that means that the planning phase takes a year or two, the identification of funding, and construction is a long ways off. Now, if we just need to sandblast and paint, that's a different story.
All right. And then follow up on Pine Street sidewalks. You were gonna tell me if they were gonna extend them or if they were just
Yeah.
going to redo the existing.
I think you can probably count on the fact that there's not gonna be much in the budget for extension of sidewalks.
Just redo.
Yeah,
Sure.
we have identified, and I don't really recall, but I'll get them to you. We've solidified the streets that we're going to pave. And I believe we have solidified the discussion about sidewalks, but I'd have to get that in a follow-up.
My last piece is, while Dave and I were campaigning, several people spoke about wanting to change the number of trustees to 5. And so I'm just bringing that to the table to see how my fellow trustees might feel about that, and if that's something that we might want further discussion upon at a later time.
I would leave it up to the voters.
So it's something to put on the ballot for March next year.
Or
Could
November.
be.
Yep.
Could be.
So, you know, sidewalks was one of those things that people were talking about. What are our policies for individuals who do construction or other construction events that destroy the sidewalks and then they don't get replaced?
So, yeah, if that's brought to our attention, so you mean like a private contractor goes in, does whatever excavating,
Yep.
paving, whatever it might be?
Correct.
It's always been a problem.
Well, I hope in that case the homeowner reaches out to the village and makes us aware of that, and granted, I've only been here 16 months, but I've heard, I don't think I've ever heard that.
I mean, it's been an issue, and I know of several places where projects have the construction equipment totally destroys. And like on Spring Street, we know exactly about this one a little bit further
I think
that
so.
literally, it's not much left of it. It's rounded off. And it just seems like a policy that if the taxpayers have already paid for it, that was upgraded, you do something, and granted, it's a common area, right? But you're doing a private project that destroys a public infrastructure, you should be held accountable for repairing it.
Agreed.
I agree too.
You have to know every time it happens.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
I
challenge.
can't
We would have-
recall, and you're out front, you hear from the public as much as I do.
I've got a case study, and it happened to me, actually, and we've never discussed this before, but it did happen to me in the past over on 1 North River Street.
Yep.
And when the grain company had bought George Klein's house, they tore that down, and again, I have no animosity towards them, zero, but they tore that down and they reconfigured that sidewalk, and when they did, they went over it with excavators and they just smashed it all down. Well, before the water ran down the street, hit the storm drains, and it was gone. After that, because it got smashed down, the water was re-diverted and went right at my house, and I had multiple flooding events in that basement that had never happened there before. Previous owners never had an issue, never had a sump pump, nothing, but it did completely re-divert the road. Dean and the highway department jumped on it once it was brought to their attention, and they did a lot of work out front to re-divert that road and the sidewalk there so that it actually would now flow down the street into the storm drains where it was designed to, but it does happen.
Yeah.
I guess is the moral of the
Yeah,
story.
I think
And
it's.
it happened to me.
Yeah, I
So-
think you notify us, and it's good to hear that Dean did his, but I would
He
like to
jumped
see
right on
some accountability on the company that did the work.
You know, I don't think it was done with malice,
Right.
and I think once Dean was notified of the problem,
Yep.
they jumped on it and did a great job.
I mean, when a large construction project happens with, you got the large tandem trucks backing in and over, they're not really meant, sidewalks aren't engineered for that type of tonnage. And once that project's over, those sidewalks are never gonna kind of see that, but you can literally see how badly damaged after a project is completed, and I can name several of them. That have been an issue that people have asked about, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know what our policy is about it, but it does seem like you destroyed public property inadvertently, not directly, but it's your responsibility to repair or.
It took me 2 years to figure out what actually caused it, and finally I was like, wow, okay, now I see what happened. It's
Yeah.
literally running down, we had to wait out there in big storms, okay, we've had multiple problems, but it does happen.
Sure.
And,
We've seen it.
happened to me. So, unfortunately, the town did the right thing, jumped right on it, in a short time took care of it, but, it happens,
But I guess the big question would be is who should be paying for that?
yeah.
Yeah, the community's just got done paying for sidewalks that have been done 5 or 6 years ago, and
Yeah, if we know about it right at the time, I think that's when it's fresh, right? You dialogue, you call the company. There's no company that is reputable that's not gonna have a grown-up discussion with you, you know?
I don't, it wasn't done with malice, it just
Right.
happened.
Yep.
It was part of the process.
so what do we do about that?
This is part of it right here. You have the dialogue
Dialogue
of
and
people that
talk
if they're,
about
if there
Putting,
are
establishing a
damages.
policy out there, and
I think the policy exists.
They gotta report.
It does exist?
I think so. If somebody damages your property, you know, they're liable, and we go after them if necessary.
Okay.
Much
However,
the same as if it happened and it was not sidewalk, but it was on your property, you would go after them
Yeah.
in that manner and have that dialogue.
Excellent. Where do we go to check that policy?
Well, we'll check internally.
Zoning?
I don't recall
Zoning?
yeah, but I don't.
I don't know that there is a policy.
Is there an ordinance?
So, but we,
I don't know.
village kind of manages the sidewalks, right?
Right, yeah.
Our
Very
sidewalks,
little.
Even
correct.
though
Yes.
they're in the town as well.
Yeah, that would be a
That's,
town,
that's
the
interesting.
town would have to deal with it.
That's always
Bushy
interesting.
Street,
Margaret
it's
Drive.
counted as a-
Right.
Don't
Yep.
we clean that?
It might be in the street ordinance.
I think,
Could be.
Well, there are lots of parts where people think it's a village, but it's really a
I
town.
don't
Right.
think it's in the ordinances.
I think
Maybe
it
we
is.
annex it.
However, you know, we don't know if people don't tell us. And I see a lot of that.
Right.
They come in and,
Did we annex that property already? Did we annex 124? Not yet.
We did not, we won't do that until the next legislative session, so we'll pay taxes on that next year as well.
Okay.
That ends, all
Well,
necessary business?
I'm okay.
Was he done?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
no, I'm
Okay.
done.
Okay.
Thank you. I
we're done with
appreciate
it.
it.
I'm all done.
Yeah.
almost all
Anybody
of us.
else, discussion on? So I guess the next, topic is executive session.
So, yeah, so we'd seek a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel, real estate, and legal matters.
So who,
I'll second.
I have a point of information,
Mhm.
I believe. One VSA 313 states that we are supposed to make a specific finding about the premature public knowledge would clearly place us or somebody else in a, what does it say, substantial disadvantage.
Well, like the town does.
Yes.
Should say
Yeah.
that.
And you can't discuss personnel in open session.
Personnel, it says it has to be about labor agreements, arbitration, mediation, grievances, appointments or evaluations, and disciplinary and dismissal action. So that is, is that what we're going to discuss?
Oh, yeah, I promise, when you come out of executive session, you will readily agree that everything we're gonna talk about belongs in executive session.
Okay, perfect. And then just the real estate, and that says that we have to, it's about negotiating and securing or leasing
No buying.
the real estate. Is that
No
what we're
buying.
discussing?
We will meet all the legal requirements of going into executive session in all three categories, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I almost think
Nice
it's-
meeting.